Shabbat Shalom to all. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I welcome you. I welcome those who are with us virtually via our Zoom link today. And in particular, I welcome Lori, who is watching us, who was not able to be here, but certainly to welcome her and all of you who are online this morning. Like many of you, I was watching the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, this week. Now, let me explain. I'm a rabbi. I mean, I know about long speeches, but mostly about giving them, not about listening to them, to tell you the truth. But it was really exhausting to listen to all of those. Not that they weren't good, but my God, they were so long. So I had an idea. Maybe it was prompted by this week's Parsha, I don't know. But a speaker can never speak too long if people know that there's food afterwards. So I thought if the convention would serve a kiddush after the speeches, so that way, comes a certain time, they got to be finished because people are going to kiddush. I mean, I know, now there is a kiddush today, so you don't have to worry about me, right? It's a thought. And so as I was watching and I watched carefully some of the key speeches, and I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised and heartened by some of the things that were said, particularly by Kamala Harris, about Israel in particular. It's heartening to know that Israel is the only country whose support is explicitly mentioned in both Republican and Democratic platforms. But I have to say that even though I listened with a degree of pleasant surprise, I would say, because we haven't really heard what her policies are going to be, I did have a degree as well of some trepidation and hesitation about the Democratic Party because of the small but vocal group, both on the floor of the convention as well as outside, that are demanding, of course, not only a ceasefire, which we all hope will be the case, but an embargo of arms against Israel. And so a lot of these people were waiting to hear what the difference would be between the position of the current administration and if the vice president is now going to be, if she is elected, what would be her policies. My concern is really not over this small minority of people who are really not representative, I don't think, of the mainstream. But in a party which is the home to the vast majority of American Jews, I wonder what is the response and what is the support among American Jews for Israel. The voices that we hear of dissent join the international chorus of condemnation of Israel, motivated in many cases by this sort of self-righteous, false morality, vilifying Israel and exonerating terrorism on campuses. It's even worse and more blatant as Hamas, which is a fascist, terrorist, violent force, is embraced as heroic while Israel is vilified as the embodiment of evil. I wish that those forces that stand against Israel would understand that Israel is surrounded by those that, if given means and opportunity, would kill, murder, maim, capture as many innocent Israelis as they possibly could. Israel surrounded by Iranian surrogates, as you know, Hamas in Gaza, Islamic Jihad, the West Bank, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, and of course, the head of the snake, Iran itself. Israel is a country which struggles mightily to live normal and sane lives, struggling to be normal in an encroaching sea which churns with violence, hatred, and chaos. It's the ongoing mission of the IDF, sometimes more successfully than others, to fend off these evil and violent threats. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating when the reality of Israel is so clear, and yet the forces, the chorus of voices in the world, beginning with the United Nations, refuses to acknowledge the right, not the right, the obligation of a sovereign state to protect its citizens and keep them safe. What worries me is not just a minority of voices in the Democratic Party, but a world that refuses to acknowledge that what's happening in Gaza is not revenge killing or some sort of an Israeli incursion. This is a war started by Hamas. It's a war against Hamas. And the justification of the war, the goals of the war cannot be disputed. They're quite simple. Israel needs to protect its citizens and provide safety for those who live within its sovereign borders. That's it. And those who are ambivalent and those who don't quite know what to say about Israel and those naysayers, they need to be able to articulate this reality. They have to be able to say that that the plight of the Palestinians is painful, it's regretful, it's tragic. But it's not a situation created by Israel, it's a situation created by Hamas. It's their strategy to use their own people as fodder and human shields, as a cynical way to garner sympathy and support in the larger world. For Hamas, as you know, the deaths of its own people is a strategy. And for Israel, it's a tragedy. Nevertheless, Israel will not stop its war against terror, nor will it shirk its obligation to protect its own citizens. What concerns me today, however, is less the chorus of anti-Israel voices raised by those who hate us. What concerns me today is the lack of strong, articulate, and energetic advocacy from within the Jewish community. In particular, I note the lack of connection among young American Jews today, specifically the 30 and under cohort, which ultimately will become the future of the American Jewish community. According to the AJC, American Jewish Committee, more than 2/3 of American Jews in general feel somewhat connected to or strongly connected to the state of Israel. But when you look at the younger cohort, that number drops to 48%. 48% of the younger cohort of American Jews feel somewhat or strongly connected to Israel, which means that 52% don't feel much of a connection, if not have negative feelings. And of that 48% of those who are feel connected, if you siphon away the members, the young people who are part of the Orthodox world, which supports Israel at a much higher level, I shudder to think of that, how that breakdown goes of 48% between some connection and a great and strong connection. My suspicion, and I'm sure I'm right on this, is that the some far outnumber those for whom there is a great deal of connection. So how do we make that connection? What do we do? And what will it look like? I'm not sure, but here's a question for you. What is the largest pro-Israel organization in the United States? What? Yes. What'd you say? Yeah. No, Steve is right. Goofy. Yep. If you thought maybe AIPAC, you'd be wrong. AIPAC is second. The largest pro-Israel organization in this country is CUFI, Christians United for Israel. Now, and among that group, I would suspect that if surveyed about their connection to Israel, most in that group would say Israel's deeply important to them, not somewhat important. And I have to say, it's heartening to know that so many of our Christian brethren feel such a connection, a deep and strong connection to Israel, regardless of their motivation. But I have to say that when it comes to support of Israel, Israel is ours. The support of Israel must come at its core from the Jewish community. We are the core. That's where support of Israel starts. It started here in the Jewish community. It extends to Congress, it extends to the non-Jewish world, but it has to begin in the Jewish community. Israel is ours. A connection with Israel is not created by facts or figures. It doesn't rely on flourishes of rhetoric, hoping that a clever phrase or motto or a chant will instill some sort of connection with the Jewish homeland. A genuine connection needs to be created that is not just easily stated, but assures the support and the advocacy that is necessary to continue the support of Israel for America for Israel. And I would say that a connection with Israel is crucial, if not indispensable, for Jewish identity in this country. I want to tell you, as an Israeli, I'm an Israeli, we made Aliyah. And most Israelis do not understand the crucial and undeniable fact that the state of Israel relies for its existence in part on the United States. There is no strong Israel without a strong connection with the United States. Many Israelis will say, we don't need it. We can handle everything. Not true. Not true. The support of the United States for Israel is indispensable to the viability and strength of the state of Israel. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that happens? To quote one of the speakers at the convention, Michelle Obama, you have to do something. What do you do? Well, at this point, I'd like to pivot a little bit for some show and tell. Actually, not show, mostly tell. Okay, so people have been asking, okay, Rabbi, what have you been doing in your retirement? And whatever discretionary time I have had, I've been busy with a variety of things, but what discretionary time I have, I use for my hobby, which is woodworking. I've always loved working with my hands, and with the support and encouragement of a few people, some of whom, I don't know they're here today, but some of our members have been very supportive of me and helping me along as I pursued my passion with tremendous desire, with tremendous patience, and a remarkable degree of mediocrity. And you see, to make a simple wood project, which is what I've been doing, requires the purchase of a variety of tools and materials and epoxies. It's expensive. But it's necessary in order to make these projects upon which I'm working. A simple challah board that I have been working on requires the cutting and the routing and the sanding and the sanding. Did I say sanding? The sanding and the finishing of the wood. It honestly doesn't look like much, but it is unique. So sometimes people say, okay, well, I'd love to buy one. Okay, how much would it cost? Well, I started figuring out, well, you take the wood and the materials, and I figured, I used to, as a kid, I would make $4.50 an hour mowing lawns or something. So if you take $4.50 an hour on my challah boards, I figured that a challah board's worth about $800. Now, which is, so you understand why I don't want to part with it, and nobody is lining up to force me to part with my. And after all that time, you sort of have a deep relationship with each piece of wood. We spent a lot of time together. And the value of that wood and those projects do not correlate so much to the actual cost that would be charged. To me, what is most important is that they're priceless to me. Which brings me to Parshat Eikev. In Parshat Eikev this morning, we say, Psal lecha et shnei luchot havanim. The Torah tells us that God said to Moses, you have to make shnei luchot havanim. You have to make 2 new tablets for the 10 Commandments. You'll remember what happened. Moses was up on the mountain. He gets the tablets from God. He comes down, sees the children of Israel. If you haven't seen, you can see it on TikTok. They come down. He comes down. They're dancing around, right? And he throws down the tablets out of frustration and anger at the Jewish people. And there is a compilation of Midrash known as Yalkut Shimoni, which begins as follows: Bisha'a sheshiber Moshe et haluchot amar lo hakadosh baruch hu elav hitzavta et haluchot. It says there that when Moses broke the tablets, that God was angry. How do you do that? I mean, here, God made the tablets and he throws them down. How do you do that? So God's angry and he says to Moses, listen, you make the tablets. Because if you spend the time and you spend the energy hewing that stone and making the shape, and you know what, you saw the movie. It's in the movie. It's a big thing. You have to make it. Takes a long time to make something. It's a lot of work. And when you work with something, even before the finger of God will inscribe the 10 Commandments, when you work on something that hard and with that diligence and with that care, you're not going to throw it down in anger in such a cavalier or dismissive manner. What we work for, how hard we labor, how deeply we are committed to what we are doing, That's just how unbreakable the bond is with that which we create. When we are invested in what we are doing, even if the final outcome is not perfect, that final product maybe is not exactly what we envision, but we stick with it and we hold it dear because it's ours. We're invested in it. We stick to it. It's a good thing that I wasn't there with Moses, because if God had asked me to work on the Luchot, the children of Israel might still be wandering in the desert. It takes a long time. But when you invest and you take the time and it becomes personal, then you don't get rid of it or dismiss it or allow someone else to take it. If you want to engage with Israel, do something. Give something, write something, speak to someone about Israel, go for a visit to Israel. Go see the real Israel, not the one that you see online or on CNN, not the one that you hear about from those misinformed anti-Israel protesters who don't know the difference between the Jordan River and the Mississippi. When you are invested in Israel, when you put in the work that's necessary, you will not say, easy come, easy go. And frankly, I think that we have made Israel seem too easy to access, and therefore too easy to disregard or dismiss. We take Israel's existence for granted. And we here in the United States have not asked American Jews really to do too much on behalf of Israel. Most people, especially that young cohort, has grown up knowing very little about Israel's ongoing struggles, her vision of prophetic excellence, or her ongoing problems. They know nothing of the challenges that it faces to absorb and care for every Jew that arrives at Israel's gates. They know nothing about Israel's struggles simply to survive the myriads of existential threats that they have on a daily basis. They know nothing about the fact that there are probably close to, if not more than 100,000 Israelis who are not in their homes because they live in the Gaza envelope area or in the north where it's too dangerous for them to be in their homes, and so they're out of their homes and have been out since October last year. This cohort of young people don't know the history, the sacrifices, and the price which is Israel and Israelis have paid to reach this moment. The lesson that I want to garner and convey today about Israel is that nothing of great value comes easily or cheaply. Nothing worth having or doing comes easily. As an Israeli citizen, and I can also say this, and I don't think, if you're not a citizen, I'm not sure it's right to say it, but I can say it, that we American Jews have to learn how to love Israel, and I will tell you that the current government of Israel makes that challenge even more difficult. And if you want to do something for Israel, make Aliyah and vote the bums out of office. But do something to connect to Israel, even if it's inconvenient. Join an organization, federation, JNF, don't ZOA, J Street, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Join an organization that is explicitly connected and committed to Israel. Read about Israel, listen, visit. If it was easy and cheap to connect to Israel, how important could that connection be? There's nothing more important to Israel in this moment of pain and vulnerability than a closer and more supportive connection between the American Jewish community and Israel. It may not be easy to accomplish that in the current environment, but just remember, something this important will never come easily or cheaply. I'd like to ask you